Have you ever heard someone say, "We need to do better"? But behind those words, a truth so painful was waiting to surface. When she repeated those exact words to me with confidence, I only gave a quiet reply, yet that single response brought a shocking twist she never expected. Don't miss this emotional story until the very end. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and follow every second of the tension, betrayal, and revelation that unfolds. May everyone who supports this channel be blessed with good health, abundant sustenance, and protection from those who speak sweet words but hide bitter lies. The words came out of her mouth like a soft echo, yet they carried a weight that pressed heavily against my chest. We need to do better. I froze. It wasn't the sentence itself that struck me. It was the familiarity of it. Those exact words had been spoken to me before, but not by her. They belonged to someone else, whispered in a moment I thought would never return to haunt me. Her eyes met mine, steady and full resolve, as if she truly believed she was offering wisdom, hope, even a second chance. But I wasn't looking at her face. I was looking through her, trying to chase the memory of when I had last heard that phrase. It was him. Those words were his, spoken in a hushed voice during late nights when arguments stretched too long, when promises felt paper-thin, and when the line between love and duty blurred. We need to do better. He had said it with conviction, like a leader rallying his team, like a lover trying to patch together the pieces of something already breaking. And now she was saying them, repeating them almost word for word, as if they had been handed to her in confidence. My hands tightened around the edge of the table. The sound of my heartbeat filled the silence between us. She waited for me to respond, clearly expecting agreement, reassurance, or maybe even gratitude. After all, who could argue with words that sounded so noble, so reasonable? But my silence wasn't hesitation. It was recognition. I remembered the night he said those words to me. His hand had rested on mine, warm and steady, but his eyes were distant. I hadn't understood it then, but now, with her standing in front of me, I finally did. Those words had never truly belonged to me. They were never ours. They had always been borrowed, carried from one heart to another, until the truth could no longer hide. Her voice broke the stillness again. You know it's true. We've been circling the same mistakes, walking the same paths. Don't you think it's time to do better? The confidence in her tone felt rehearsed. There was no trembling, no hesitation. It was too perfect, too polished, like something repeated until it no longer felt foreign. I studied her carefully. The way her lips curled slightly upward, the faint tremor in her hands she tried so hard to hide. My suspicion deepened. This wasn't just a conversation. This was a performance. And yet, for a fleeting second, I almost let myself believe. Maybe she meant it. Maybe she truly thought we could rise above the cracks and scars, rebuild what was broken, and erase the past that loomed between us. But then the memory of his voice rang louder. I could still hear it. The exact same cadence, the same tone, the same promise wrapped in those 4 words. And I realized something chilling. She hadn't come up with this herself. She had borrowed his words. The question clawed at me. Why? Why would she repeat him? Why would she echo a man who was supposed to be far removed from her world? Unless, the thought made my stomach twist. The air in the room felt heavier, as if the walls themselves knew the truth I was only beginning to uncover. I looked at her again, really looked, the way her gaze flickered to the side for just a moment, the way her confidence faltered ever so slightly under the weight of my silence. It was then I understood she wasn't just repeating a phrase she had heard somewhere. She was repeating his words, directly, deliberately, and in that moment, a quiet storm began to build inside me. I didn't lash out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. Instead, I let the silence linger, letting her grow restless beneath my stare. Because sometimes silence speaks louder than rage. She shifted uncomfortably, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "Say something," she urged, her voice tight. "Don't you agree? We really do need to do better." I finally drew in a slow breath, steadying myself. My lips parted, but the words didn't rush out. They were deliberate, measured, and quiet. Not yet the twist, not yet the revelation, but the beginning of it. For when I finally spoke, My reply was not what she expected, and in that instant, the ground beneath us both began to shift. My reply was soft, almost whispered, yet it cut through the air sharper than a blade. Funny, that's not the first time I've heard those words. Her expression faltered, just for a heartbeat. Her eyes widened before she quickly masked it with a thin smile. But I saw it. The crack in her calm, the ripple beneath the surface she had worked so hard to keep still. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone measured, carefully laced with curiosity. But I knew better. That wasn't curiosity. It was fear disguised as innocence. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch, savoring the weight of my own words. I wasn't rushing to explain. I wanted her to feel it, to sense the storm brewing quietly, steadily, beneath my composure. "I've heard those exact words before," I said finally, my eyes never leaving hers, almost as if you borrowed them. The way her hand twitched against the table told me I had struck the right nerve. She chuckled lightly, though the sound was brittle. "Well, I suppose a lot of people say that. It's not exactly an unusual phrase." But that wasn't true, and she knew it. There was a rhythm, a particular cadence, to how he had said it, and she had mirrored it perfectly. Too perfectly. I remembered the night his words sank into me. We had been sitting in the car, the streetlights painting gold streaks across the windshield. We were fighting again, fighting about promises, about trust, about the walls between us. And then he leaned closer, his hand brushing mine as he whispered, "We need to do better." It wasn't just a sentence. It was a lifeline, a plea wrapped in confidence, meant to soothe and disarm. The kind of phrase you couldn't forget because it carried more than meaning. It carried intent. And now she was holding that same lifeline in her hands, dangling it before me as if it were hers to give. "You repeat him well," I murmured. Her face stiffened. "Repeat who?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. My silence was enough. Her composure began to unravel in tiny fragments, too small for someone untrained to notice, but glaring to me. The slight tremor in her voice, the shallow breaths, the way she avoided my gaze for a fraction too long. "Is there a reason you're looking at me like that?" she asked, trying to regain her control. "Yes," I replied simply. She blinked, and that is... I tilted my head, watching her squirm, because I know when words aren't yours. I know when they belong to someone else. And I know who gave them to you. The room grew colder. She tried to hold my gaze, but her strength faltered. For the first time that evening, she looked small, cornered. "You're imagining things," she whispered, her voice thinner than before. "I don't know what you're talking about." But denial, especially the fragile kind, always rang louder than truth. I didn't argue. Instead, I let my quietness stretch further, the way I had learned silence could suffocate more than shouting ever could. And she felt it. I could see the tension building in her shoulders, the way her jaw tightened. Memories flooded me again, his late-night texts, his excuses, the way his voice softened when he said those words to me, only for them to now reappear on her lips. It was no coincidence. It was a thread, and that thread was unraveling fast. "I'm not sure what you're accusing me of," she said, her voice growing sharper now, defensive. "But if you're suggesting something—" "I don't need to suggest anything," I interrupted quietly. "Your words already did it for you." Her mouth opened, then closed again, as if the reply she wanted to give had tangled itself in her throat. For a long moment, we just stared at each other, her trying to hold on to control, me refusing to release the truth I now gripped tightly in my hands. Then, with a trembling exhale, she finally broke the silence. "And if I did borrow those words," she whispered, "what difference would it make?" That was it. The slip, the crack wide enough to reveal what she had been trying so desperately to hide. I leaned forward, my voice lower now, firm but calm. "It makes all the difference. Because now I know. And once I know, there's no going back." Her lips trembled, though she pressed them together quickly. She looked away, staring at the floor as if it could swallow her whole. And in that moment, I realized something. The battle was no longer about the words themselves. It was about what those words revealed. The connection, the betrayal, the hidden truth neither of us had spoken aloud. But it wouldn't stay hidden much longer, because the quiet reply I had given was only the beginning. The real twist was still coming. The silence that followed was suffocating. She avoided my eyes, her fingers drumming lightly against a wooden table, as though the rhythm could drown out the truth pressing down on us. But silence has a way of magnifying what people want to bury, and in that stillness, I saw her unraveling. Her lips parted as if she wanted to argue again, but no words came. Instead, a nervous laugh escaped, short, brittle, and out of place. "You're reading too much into it," she said, though her voice quivered. "I only meant that, well, we all could try harder, couldn't we? That's all." I tilted my head, studying her. "Is that really all you meant?" Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, and in that brief second, I saw fear flash through them. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by an almost defiant glare. But the damage was done. That one moment told me more than any denial she could offer. I leaned forward, my tone calm but piercing. "You know, lies are never dangerous because of their words. They're dangerous because of the cracks they leave behind. And right now you're full of cracks." Her composure faltered again. She clenched her fists on the table, forcing her voice into a steady rhythm. "You're twisting everything. You're making it sound like something it's not. But I didn't need to twist anything. The truth was twisting her on its own." Images flashed through my mind. The late-night phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. The strange familiarity in the way she sometimes smiled. The fleeting expression she wore when she thought no one was watching. All the pieces I had ignored were clicking together, sharper now, cutting deeper than I was prepared for. And the phrase, those words, was the final piece. "You don't understand," she said suddenly, her voice rising. "It's not what you think." I raised a brow. "Then tell me what it is." She opened her mouth but froze, her throat working as if the explanation she longed to give was strangled by something heavier. Guilt, fear, or perhaps the simple knowledge that the truth would destroy her. The room was heavy with things unsaid. I leaned back, letting the chair creak under my weight, my eyes never leaving hers. "You see, the problem isn't that you said those words. The problem is that I know exactly where you got them." Her breath caught, just the faintest gasp, but enough. I pressed on, my voice low. "He told me those words. He whispered them to me like a promise. And now, here you are, handing them back to me as if they belonged to you. Do you really expect me to believe that's just a coincidence?" Her face went pale. Her lips trembled. For the first time, she didn't try to defend herself. The silence was louder than any confession. Finally, she whispered, "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Those words hit me harder than a scream. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Not supposed to. That meant it did happen. I sat there, the weight of her admission sinking like stones in water, rippling outward, tearing through every fragile hope I had held on to. The betrayal wasn't just in the repetition of words. It was in the connection they revealed. She saw the realization spread across my face and panicked. "No, wait. Listen to me. It wasn't planned. I didn't mean for it to." I held up my hand, silencing her. "Stop." Her voice cracked. "Please, let me explain." "Stop," I said again more firmly. My calmness wasn't mercy. It was fire contained, ready to consume everything the moment I let it burn. She swallowed hard, tears beginning to gloss her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. "I thought I could control it, that it would just fade. But it didn't. And when he said those words, Her voice broke completely. The confession I had dreaded but expected finally surfaced, raw and trembling. She had borrowed more than his words. She had borrowed his promises, his comfort, his touch. The cracks weren't cracks anymore. They were fractures, splitting wide open until the truth spilled through, undeniable and merciless. And I sat there, staring at the wreckage of what we once were, realizing that my quiet suspicion had now transformed into a reality that could never be undone. Still, I didn't scream. I didn't rage. I didn't collapse. Instead, I breathed and slowly held it and let it out with the steady calm of someone who had just witnessed collapse of everything, yet refused to be buried beneath it, because I knew what came next. Her cracks were only the beginning. The real twist, the one neither of them expected, was still waiting in the shadows of my silence. Her tears spilled freely now, streaking her cheeks as she struggled to hold my gaze. The mask she had worn so carefully was shattered. There was no polished composure left, no forced laughter to disguise her guilt, only the raw truth, trembling in every word that slipped past her lips. "I didn't want this," she whispered, voice shaking. "I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened." I sat motionless, my hands resting on the table, fingers laced tightly together to keep them from trembling. Inside, the storm raged. Every memory, every suspicion, every late-night thought I had brushed aside, all of it surged forward with brutal clarity. "So it's true," I said softly. "You didn't just borrow his words. You borrowed him." She flinched, pressing her lips together as if silence could erase the confession she had already given. But silence no longer served her. Silence was my weapon now, and I wielded it with precision. "I trusted you," I continued, my tone steady, almost unnervingly calm. "And while I was busy holding us together, you were holding on to him. Every word, every glance, every secret. You thought I wouldn't see it. But I did. I see it all now." Her sobs broke the stillness, quiet but jagged, like glass cutting through the air. "Please, just listen. I didn't want to hurt you. He said things I needed to hear. Things you weren't saying anymore. And I raised my hand to stop her. "Don't make this about what I wasn't giving you. Don't you dare." She froze, the words dying in her throat. For a long moment, I simply breathed, letting the weight of the truth settle over us both. And then, slowly, deliberately, I spoke the words that would turn everything upside down. "You think this is your secret. You think I didn't know." Confusion flickered in her tear-streaked face. What do you mean?" I leaned closer, my voice barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to pierce through her. "I knew, long before tonight, long before those words ever left your mouth." He confessed to me. Her eyes widened in shock. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. "Yes," I continued, my tone tightening. "He told me everything. How it started, how it grew, how he swore he would end it, but didn't. I listened. I let him speak, and I stayed quiet, because I wanted to see just how far you would go." Her face drained of color. You knew." "I knew." I repeated, the words deliberate, final. "And I gave you the rope to hang yourself with. You thought you were careful, but every slip, every borrowed phrase, every glance gave you away. And tonight, when you repeated his words, you proved it beyond doubt." The room seemed to tilt as she staggered back, gripping the edge of the chair for support. Why didn't you say anything sooner?" "Because sometimes," I said, my voice calm, "the truth isn't worth shouting. Sometimes it's worth waiting for, watching as the cracks widen, as the mask falls apart, until the liar destroys themselves with their own words. Tonight, you did exactly that." Her sobs deepened, broken and raw. She collapsed into the chair, burying her face in her hands. For the first time, she wasn't pretending. There was no performance left, only the weight of guilt crushing her beneath its own gravity. I stood slowly, the chair scraping lightly against the floor. My body felt heavy, but my steps were steady. I had carried the burden of knowing, the burden of silence, for too long. Tonight, I laid it down. As I reached the doorway, I paused. Her cries echoed behind me, but I didn't turn back. "You wanted us to do better," I said quietly, my voice carrying across the room. "But better doesn't mean hiding in borrowed words. Better means truth. And now, you've lost a chance to give me that." Her sobbing filled the silence I left behind. I walked away, not with rage, not with despair, but with a strange calmness, the kind that only comes when the storm is finally past, leaving nothing behind but clarity. The twist wasn't just that she had betrayed me. The twist was that I had known all along, and the most powerful reply I had ever given wasn't in words, but in the quiet strength of letting her reveal herself. The story had ended not with a performance, but with my silence. And in that silence, she was undone.